Hello and welcome to Why Haven't I Heard Anything Back from an Employer? I know this is an ancient old question and I'm here to share with you some inside information. Ever wonder why it takes so long to hear back from an employer regarding a resume or a phone screen or an interview? Well, that's what I'm going to share with you today. What's going on behind the scenes? Why is it taking the employer so darn long to get back to you? Hello and welcome to the Career Rescue Coach YouTube channel. My name is Dawn Casey. With over 20 years of human resource experience in leading human resource departments and recruitment departments, I now help people with their career challenges, changes, and of course questions. What makes this channel a little different is that having worked in the human resource and recruitment areas, I have insight as to how things are done behind the scenes. And I share this insight with you on videos just like this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and push the bell to get the latest and greatest videos. Let's get started. As we get started, I'd like to share some fun facts with you. Alright, regarding resumes. Resumes, as we know, are typically screened by a recruiter. But did you know 75% are rejected before they ever reach a hiring manager? That's because recruiters are looking for the ideal fit, the ideal candidate that meets the minimum requirements. Also, it's very important to keep your LinkedIn profile up to date because approximately 77% of recruiters use LinkedIn as one of their main tools for recruitment. Recruiters are also really selective. Typically, recruiters only select about 5% of all the resumes that they receive for one particular job. And with regard to phone screens, always prepare for phone screens because 47% of interviewers said that they would not even entertain an interview with someone who didn't know anything about their company. And because it takes your recruiters some time to schedule phone interviews and in-person phone screens, 60% of recruiters say that they often lose candidates within these phases of the job search. So they can only work so fast, but you know, in today's market, it moves very quickly. With regard to interviewing, being friendly and smiling is an important part of interviewing. In fact, 40% of interviewers thought that a smile, or a lack of smile I should say, was good enough reason not to consider a candidate. I know, crazy, right? But a smile indicates openness and friendliness, and those are the type of people that others want to work with. And of course, preparing for the interview is very, very important, but it's just as important as your dress, your mannerisms, your approach, and your presentation. Because 50% of interviewers think that a candidate can be eliminated for the position due to the way they dress, acted, or walk through the door. So it's that entire presentation that's very important. Now, what's important to understand is that each phase of the interview process is critical and takes preparation by the candidate. But there are things that are going on behind the scenes on the employer side that you just may not be aware of. So this video will provide some insight to you as to what's taking longer to hear back from the employer and why you haven't heard back quite yet. You know, there's a lot going on behind the scenes of a job search. Employers are working diligently through the process of hiring, but it takes a lot of time. Employers typically have just one recruiter working on all these jobs. For mid-sized companies, they might have 2 recruiters, and for larger companies, yes, they do have teams, but it is not the norm. It is typically 1 or 2 people only. Now, I'm going to talk through each step of the job search process to give you some insight what's really going on. All right, number 1, submitted a resume for a job and waiting to hear back. Depending upon the position, a recruiter may have multiple job openings, and for each job opening, they may have 20, 50, or even more applicants per job. That could mean up to 500 or more resumes for just 10 jobs. So it's important to understand the volume in which they're working through. And then recruiters are typically the person who are sifting through all of those resumes. They're screening for the people who meet the minimum qualifications and then also exceed them. So going through all those resumes absolutely takes some time. Once they make it through all the resumes, they initiate automated letters to those people who did not meet the requirements and then begin reaching out and scheduling phone screens for those people that did. Now, contrary to belief, Most companies do not have automated screening resume platforms. Now, I know this is a really popular belief and a misconception. It really comes down to the recruiter sifting through. Ultimately, they might have a screening tool here or there, but ultimately it comes down to a person who's actually screening all those resumes. So it takes some time. This process takes a little while and often takes about a week or so after someone submits an application to hear back. Sometimes it's even longer, as you can now understand why. For those people that do meet those minimum requirements, typically the recruiter will reach out to those candidates and start scheduling phone screens, and even that takes some time to coordinate, because each of those phone screens typically are anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. Number 2, had a phone screen interview and waiting to hear back. If you've been fortunate enough to make it to this step, good for you. The recruiter will typically tell a person during that process what the next steps are. If they did not indicate the steps, it's quite possible that a person did not make the cut, unfortunately. If they did mention what the next steps were, then simply wait. They will indeed follow up. Now, if you were told that an interview would be scheduled, then the recruiter may be trying to work with other people's schedules to find an appropriate time, and this is always challenging. Scheduling interviews and going through the interview process is the longest part of this process from the employer perspective. Typically, there are a handful of candidates that made the first cut in the first round of interviews. So it's not just your interview that they're scheduling, it's multiple people. Now, to make this a little more challenging, oftentimes a recruiter will make the most out of the interview by scheduling more than one manager during the interview. Now, syncing up schedules with multiple managers can be very challenging as well. But once the recruiter has put together the time slots, the recruiter will reach out to the candidates to get everybody scheduled. Number 3, have had a first interview and waiting to hear back. Now, if you've reached this stage, things are looking up, and if the interview went well, a person would receive indicators throughout that interview that it did indeed go well, such as things like them asking about future availability, asking what's important to you in a job, a sales pitch about the company, and a promised future contact or meeting date. Typically, at the end of the interview, the next steps are revealed, and often there is a second interview. Now, if none of the indicators were mentioned that I've mentioned a little bit here, typically that means the person did not make the cut. For those that did not make the cut, typically the recruiter will send out a letter indicating that they did make the cut and wishing that person well. If they did receive some of the indicators I mentioned, then there will be another interview. Hang tight, the recruiter's working on it. It takes a lot to put together yet another interview. Typically on the second interview, the higher level managers are included, and that takes a little bit of time to schedule them because they're even busier than the lower level managers. And at this point, there are typically only 2 candidates remaining. So this is really good news. It should be noted that if neither candidate works out, though, the recruiter will go back to the drawing board and pull out another 5 or so candidates and then begin the process again. So this is a reminder to all of you that it's very important to submit your resume as soon as a job is posted so that you're included in that first round. Number 4, have had a second and final interview and you're waiting to hear back. A meeting is often held with the interviewers to determine who will be selected as a final candidate. Sometimes this takes a little while to gather everybody in a room and discuss who the best candidate was. Typically there's a clear winner, but not always. Sometimes there's more discussion, debate that's had before one is selected. Once a recruiter has a decision, then an offer is prepared for the candidate. Now sometimes in this process, a proposal to hire or some type of process needs to be completed by the manager before the recruiter can even proceed. So that might be a little bit of time there too. Usually inside of a week of the final interview, though, an offer is extended. As a side note, when receiving a job offer, always, always, always counter offer. Their first offer is never their best offer. I just need to emphasize that. Always counter. Now, here's a fun question. What are 2 common reasons a candidate has not heard back on their application? A, the recruiter is overwhelmed by the volume or resumes and is sifting through all of them. B, the system lost some of the applications. C, a candidate did not meet the minimum qualifications. D, the recruiter throws away some of the applications. E, the recruiter is in no hurry to fill the position? Or is it F, both A and C? That is indeed the answer. It is A and C. It is always the goal of the recruiter to fill the position as soon as possible. In fact, recruiters are evaluated on time to fill, and they would never lose an application or throw it away. Here are a few tips. Be patient. There are a lot of variables from the employer's perspective, and now you can see why sometimes things take just a little bit of time. They are not ignoring you. If a recruiter is overwhelmed, receiving word back on your application may indeed take a while. It's not because they're ignoring you, it's simply because they are really busy. They have hundreds of resumes they're sifting through. Avoid pestering the recruiter. Calling the recruiter once is one thing, but continuing to follow up and follow up and follow up will not put you ahead of other people. It'll just bother the recruiter and interrupt what they're trying to get through, and probably slow them down, actually. Now, remember, you're not the only candidate. I know this is hard to remember, but you are one among hundreds, and they are sifting through and they're trying to get through all the resumes, so be patient. And then, of course, be kind. Remember to be kind throughout this process. No one wants to hire or work with a jerk. If you keep badgering the recruiter, chances are they don't want to hire you. So keep that in mind. You know, I remember once I had a candidate who we had gone through the entire interview process with. He'd gone through a phone screen, first interview, second interview, and everybody loved this candidate. But unfortunately, we fell in financial hardship, and we actually had to freeze the position temporarily. And we froze it for, I think it was about 2 months. Then what ended up happening, I did call the candidate to let them know what was happening and that we'd be in touch with them as soon as the position was unfrozen. So sure enough, once it was released, I called up the candidate, and unfortunately he had found another job. But here's what was really great. He actually didn't like the job. He really wanted to work with us, and he preferred to work for us. So we went ahead and prepared a job offer and extended that to him, and he ended up accepting and coming to work for us. He actually stayed with us for quite a while. So the point of the story is that recruiters do their best to communicate through the process. And sometimes there are delays, but it's, you know, if it's meant to work out, it absolutely will. Sometimes, you know, people try and force things and make things happen, but you know, if it's not the right fit or if it's not meant to happen, have faith that it's okay. There will be a better job for you around the corner. We walked through the various steps of recruitment and talked about what the potential delays are behind the scenes from the company's perspective. We've also provided some insight to you as to what's really going on from the company's perspective as well. Now, I'd like to share a fun slide with you. This gives you an idea of how many people recruiters are dealing with. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and push the bell to get notifications for the latest and greatest videos. Be sure to check out the Career Rescue Coach on the Facebook page. I also am on Pinterest, and so please share your comments below. I'd love to hear from you and what your experiences have been with the recruitment process and going through the job search process with employers. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Dawn Casey as a Career Rescue Coach, and remember, change your job, change your life. See you soon.